So by now, we're probably all familiar with the anti-racism creed that is, well, it's being astroturfed through society, and I want to look at why. And I've done videos on this in the past, but I want to look at it from the perspective of an ex-convict, a jewel thief named Larry Lawton. He's got a very interesting YouTube channel. And the thing is, Larry doesn't address it directly, but what he explains about prison life, because we are living on a prison planet, I think the lockdowns made that quite clear. He explains how prison life, being a microcosm of our world, shows why the powers that be actively encourage racial strife among populations, particularly here in the West. And so if you're not totally familiar with the anti-racist thing, around 2020, the infiltrated institutions and establishments, the dictionary and whatnot, they redefined the term racist to mean prejudice plus power, rather than just, well, what it's meant is discriminating for somebody's skin color. And this prejudice plus power basically gave everybody immunity from being accused of being racist, except for white people. And so being an anti-racist is basically discriminating against white people. It's basically you're going to be pro-affirmative action, pro-dropping any sort of standardized test codes or requirements, and allowing, people that may not be fit to be a brain surgeon to be brain surgeons because of skin color over qualifications. And of course, this absurdity immediately sends people into two camps. One camp that says, yes, this is why my life's been so hard, it's your fault. And then another camp of people that go, wait a minute, this is absurd and ridiculous. And we look around and everyday Americans are fighting against each other. Well, why? Well, let's let Larry explain some prison dynamics here.
The next rule you want to know is the TV rules. What's going on in the TV rooms? In Atlanta, we had 4 TV rooms. We had a black TV room, a Spanish TV room, a white TV room, and a sports TV room. Everybody hung out. Now, that does not mean Larry can't go to the black TV room. He's not gonna. He's not gonna sit in there and take a spot from somebody in that room that's going in there all the time. Vice versa. The black guys don't come into the white guy's room. Now, are we friends? You come on in. Hey, Larry, what's going on? I need to speak to you for a sec. Sure, come on in for a sec. What's going on? Hey, you're running football tickets, and I had a winner, man. Look at the game. Look at the ticket. It's guaranteed. You can see I didn't mess something up. You can talk to them. It's not like you can't meet people or talk to people in TV rooms, but you see which TV room is yours or with your race. They could say, oh, there's no race going on in prison. There is. Depending on the prison you're in, the prison actually promotes it, as sad as that is. Because they rather have the blacks fighting the whites or the Hispanics fighting the blacks. So they're not worried about themselves, the prison. They actually, trust me, they don't like that in their own way.
Interesting. In a world where they have actually limited control, they promote racial conflict because as long as the inmates are fighting amongst themselves, they are not turning their attention to the powers that be. So Larry elaborates a little more in another video where he talks about some true prison myths and some debunked prison myths and discusses again this racial conflict that's fostered by the powers.
One other myth I'm going to give you right off the top of my head is people ask me this all the time, do the guards really segregate inmates? Yes, they do in their own way. And they rather see whites fight blacks, Hispanics fight blacks, Hispanics fight Asian, Hispanics fight white, whatever it is. They rather see more conflict like that than they rather see everybody get together and control the prison. Because they know at any one good time, if we all got together, we could take that prison over anytime we want. That's a fact. That's not a joke. There's no guns in prison. You know that. The only guns they have is in the towers. They don't have guns on that yard. No guard carries a gun. No guard carries anything like a weapon at all. They carry a radio. They don't carry weapons. Always remember that. They have the authority of the prison.
So if you think you're being anti-racist, you're actually serving the Monoparty's interest. You are actually just a pawn in their little game of centralized control. And he is right. The reason that they do this is that if the people all actually got together, there's nothing that, giving angry speeches in front of a red hellscape is going to do about it. They don't have any real power. Only the power that people and the institutions that serve those politicians and leaders give them. That's it. Compliance is where their power comes from. And distraction, sports ball, silly political arguments, racial division. All these things are a divide and conquer strategy, and they have to keep churning it up, or else people might actually look up and see what's really going on. Now, I discussed this as well in a little bit more of an intellectual way. I mean, I've never been to federal prison or prison in any way, shape, or form, but I did go to college, which is an institution of its own, and got my degree in human psychology. And then I did 5 years of landscaping, so I kind of balanced it out where in a little bit more of a gritty, real environment. But I call this Program Delusions, and I really like this video. It's a little older. It goes back to 2020, but it discusses how they use what I call program delusions to create and exploit division.
Now imagine, if you will, if you could create an ambiguous image of sorts that would have such an emotional charge or fearful imagery behind it that you didn't have time to sit and stare at it to see both images. Imagine if you could make an image that was so divisive. It sent people to either one camp or the other immediately, and then those two camps fought and argued with each other because they can't believe that someone doesn't see the old woman, or can't believe someone doesn't see the young woman, as if the sight of your mother-in-law would send you running for the hills. So let me give you a real-world example of one of these programmed illusions, and that's Black Lives Matter. Now, 6 months ago, when the Black Lives Matter protests and riots were going on in Seattle, there were two people I've worked with for almost 15 years. One was a black woman, a mother, and she was nearly in tears, saying, I can't believe this kind of world my children are going to grow up in. There's people out there that can't even say the simple phrase, Black Lives Matter. And then later in the day, I called a buddy of mine. He's a white guy with long hair. He's 35, still plays in a rock band, staying out late. And you would think traditionally very liberal. And he says, man, I'm getting my CPL. I'm telling my family, you got to start carrying. We got to start packing. It is not safe out there. Trump has labeled Antifa terrorist, but those Black Lives Matter, that organization needs to be labeled terrorist too. This is a dangerous world. Both these people know each other. Both are friends, both would get together at a barbecue, and both have completely opposite perceptions of what's going on out there despite having access to the exact same information. Now, I get it. It doesn't help that BLM hides behind a Mott and Bailey fallacy, which is to say, the Mott. We simply are saying that black people's lives matter too. And the Bailey being, well, we're a Marxist, anti-American revolutionary organization, but it is two things in one, and so it is a third thing, but it's so divisive that nobody sits around to see the whole picture. They just go running into camps that are two warring camps. There's a tremendous amount of division created, and that is the point. It's not specifically to get people in one camp or the other, but just to split them into two camps. The would-be ruling class is using an old, classic divide and conquer strategy.
When a college-educated landscaper and a ex-con jewel thief YouTuber can both articulate the same divide and conquer phenomenon, I think we're getting close to the truth here. So I like to end on a little bit of a high note, a little bit of ray of hope. It's like, okay, they're trying to divide and conquer us. What do? Well, simply speaking, don't take the bait, right? It's like the rings of power. Just don't watch it. Don't watch it to critique it and say it's bad. Just don't watch it, and it will disappear. It will get washed away into the ocean of bad adaptations. You ever heard of The Wiz? Yeah, it's an all-black version of The Wizard of Oz. Have you ever heard of The Wiz? I bet you haven't. I never had till my dad told me about it when he was laughing about the latest Rings of Power. It simply ceases to exist because people don't look at it anymore. Now, in some cases, this CRT anti-stuff is getting a little bit more in your face, and that's where you have to take the institutional power over. You don't want to argue with them in a meeting and lose your job or something stupid like that, but that's where the parents taking over school boards really matters. Going, no, we're not going to teach a bunch of revisionist crap. You know, the experience of being enslaved is not a uniquely African experience. Sadly, that institution is more robust now than ever, and we have Obama to thank for it. So ignore it wherever you can, resist it wherever possible, and spread the good word. The more people that talk about this sort of thing, the more people that realize, who is it that keeps instigating these fights among everyday Americans that otherwise would have no beef with each other? Because it is the ruling class and the elites that are literally telling us, don't look up.